Yeah, so we have already started recording this conversation, and because of that, allow me to welcome Mr. Jonathan Donner. One of my colleagues is not around. She have excused herself that she want to be able to join this session. But before we engage with Mr. Jonathan, allow me to give a very brief intro about this session. The main purpose for this session, it's more of sharing knowledge. It's more of giving you tools. It's more of having conversation informally and sharing our authentic stories, and also ask questions of how best you can either position yourself online, or how best you can kind of monetize your engagement. Some of you have already shared some questions via the registration link, and we have shared this question with our guest speakers. So this is just a very brief, and this is our very first conversation. I will be hosting this conversation either weekly or bi-weekly. So before we kickstart, allow me to give opportunity to Mr. Jonathan to do a quick intro. Then we will share the next word. Mr. Jonathan, you're most welcome.
Mr. Haroon, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everybody for joining today from all over the place and several time zones, and you know, having to put down several things to spend the time with us today. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak to everybody about this very broad topic of platform livelihoods. And I don't know whether I'm supposed to sort of jump into content yet, or just do the quick introduction. Let me start with the introduction and then hand it back to you for to guide us into the full conversation. But I am the director of research for a very small consultancy called Caribou Digital. We do work around the world in partnership with some big foundations and some large development organizations and some private sector clients. So things like the World Bank and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and MasterCard Foundation and several others, working on problems about basically using digital tools and all the remarkable promise of the digital era that we're in to build more inclusive and equitable and sustainable economies and societies for people around the world. So I do some of my work in Africa, but not all of my work. It's been just a pleasure to be able to work on some of these topics over the years. What I will be talking about later is this idea of platform livelihoods. We've written, pulled together an edited book about it, which I'll talk about in a little while. But I come to you not with a whole presentation in mind, and here's the the answer, but rather in the spirit of a conversation. And I really do look forward to responding to questions and asking a few myself and seeing how this goes. So thanks again for having me, Haroon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Jonathan, for the brief intro. And as you all know, our today's session, it's purely more concerning how best you can leverage digital platform. And our guest speaker will be sharing a very detailed concerning the latest book, which was launched some few weeks or months ago. And you'll be learning a lot about this. Plus also we will be sharing with you link of how you can access this book virtually. So there's a way you can access this book virtually. That will be one of our gifts at the end of this session. So don't sign out so quickly. Stay with us. So as you all know, or for those who don't know me, I'm Haroon Mwadena. I'm from Kilifi, County of Kenya. I'm a youth and gender activist with more of a background in the human rights defending sector. So also, as we're having this conversation, it's purely more of a storytelling, informal way. And I'll be also sharing my story on how I managed to leverage some of this digital platform to make my livelihood as a youth activist. And this will be kind of a build-up conversation from Mr. Jonathan, who will be sharing a little bit of the technical side, so that to give you guys more tips. So because of that, allow me to hand over to Mr. Jonathan to start the conversation. Then I will pick up later. Mr. Jonathan.
Thanks so much. Do you want me to share a few slides, or would you prefer I just talk? I can really do this in either direction.
Any can work, but
Anything can work.
yeah.
Let me put a few slides up just to help us along. That way I know I won't forget anything. But again, my intention is not to talk at you for very long, but rather to kind of launch into what I hope is going to be a dialogue between all of us. But yeah, let me just share a few, and that'll be a way I can kind of frame some of these remarks about this idea called platform livelihoods, which I think will set up very nicely the conversation that you should all have about to what extent you may all have livelihoods that have a platform component to it, or at least a digital component to it, and what you can learn from lessons from elsewhere in the region and beyond. So let me see if I'm a host and I can share. If I can't, it's okay. Nope, I'm not a host yet. Or I can't screen share. But let me get started in the meantime while Harun is doing that. So I should start by saying, yes, we're going to talk about a book. The book is an assembly of 11 original chapters and a little bit of discussion around that. And that's 11 different studies that my organization has done in partnership with at least a dozen different institutions. They are based in Ghana and in Nigeria and in Kenya. We've worked a little bit in Indonesia. We've done field work in Uganda. The partners are from all over. And we've basically, the book's got 40 different authors in it. I'm the messenger, not the author. The second thing I'd say is that these studies would not have been done without the kind partnership and support of the donors, essentially, who made the work happen. And that's the MasterCard Foundation, who's been focused on areas of youth livelihoods in Africa for a number of years now, and has been a keen supporter of our work. And also a couple chapters or studies that were conducted in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, particularly our work on platform finance and an estimate we did of the size of the platform economy in Indonesia. So thanks to the partners, and thanks particularly to the proper authors who've been along in this journey with us. Let me see if I can share a slide now. Nope, not yet. Okay. I'm still going to do this without
Add you as a host.
Am I a host?
Yeah, you're now a host.
Now I'm a host.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Super. So this is the book, and you guys will get a link at the end. I actually even like telling the story of this photo, because it's actually really hard when you're doing this work about digital, and it's all, little tiny screens, and nobody likes to take a picture of a little tiny screen, but to see stuff in action happening here. This is a guy who runs a channel called Farm with Fred in Kenya, but with audiences beyond Kenya. And there are tens of thousands of subscribers that Fred has, sharing knowledge about agricultural best practices, how to run a small farm, how to market one's products, how to build connections with other farmers, how to build connections with retailers. He's got a YouTube channel, and I think he's on TikTok too, but he's definitely on YouTube. And that's the way he earns his living. Fred has a platform livelihood in addition to being a farmer, and we like the photo so much that it's the cover of the book. We'll talk a little bit more about agriculture towards the end. It's worth saying that this is not a conversation today about everything digital, right? That there are these huge questions about how our society is reflected in our technology, and our technology is reflected in our society. We live in the digital world with a foot in the analog and a foot in the digital. And there's sort of a set of questions within that about how we make that just, and how we make that inclusive, and how we give everybody an opportunity to prosper in a digital economy. And that's these sort of technology and development questions. And then inside there's this little bit about, what role do these platforms play? and that was the sort of topic of our book. So I'm not going to talk about all these big picture issues about technology and society today, but keep that in the back of the mind. I mean, I think the spirit of the conversation we're having today is it's a digital world. How do you live in it, and how do you prosper in it? So it's worth thinking a little bit about what platforms are. I'll do that. Then I'll talk about platform livelihoods, and then I'll do some stuff on what we should do. You might recognize some of these brands here too. Some of them are from elsewhere, like Mercado Libre is the biggest e-commerce platform in Latin America. Amazon's in the States. Alibaba is a giant Chinese exporter platform. I mean, there's lots of different types of platforms. Jumia is in the region, and you guys probably recognize them. When we talk about platforms, we're really talking about marketplaces. So this first picture is as old as humanity, right? Which is just a marketplace. That picture, that sky picture from above, that's a marketplace in Indonesia, where there's a place that people gather and somebody rents out the kind of corners, right? So that you can put up your little stand. Maybe you have to pay a little bit to have that stand there. And then people come and go, and the prices vary. And it's this wonderful place where humans interact in marketplaces. What's been happening in the last 20 years is that we've figured out how to do this at massive scale in digital, right? And so something like eBay is essentially at its core a digital marketplace where there's a buyer and a seller and someone who sort of sets the terms of that exchange without completely controlling it. They give up some control, and then kind of beautiful chaos happens, and people exchange in so many ways. So there's lots of different types of these platforms. They're in every type of economy. They're in every economic sector. So like your ride hailing is a platform now, and your essay writing is a platform, and your weekend food delivery is a platform, and your jet engine even as a platform, if you can believe it. There are some companies that'll help you kind of match to like what particular engine you need. Everything's a platform. And I think that we add that even these social media things like Facebook and WhatsApp can act like those platforms too. They become places where people exchange. You guys, probably a lot of you on the call have WhatsApp groups on your phones that just go all day long. If you don't mute them, you never get anything done. But some of the things that happen on those groups are informal, emergent, trusting marketplaces between people who are exchanging goods or dinner or rides or advice or whatever. We need to understand all of this. Some of the same rules apply from Indonesia 1,000 years ago, and some are brand new because they're happening at scale. So some of the books about this kind of like what's new and what's old. So in Africa, this slide's a couple years old now. I can't guarantee that they're all still around, but most of these are still kicking, and they're still helping to structure those relationships, right? There's lots of African marketplaces for goods. There's lots of gig working platforms, some of which are really quite local, some are international. There's online international work things, so you can sit in a cyber cafe somewhere in Kenya, and you can work for somebody who's buying the work from France, right? And that's an amazing opportunity for some people to be freelancers. You can exchange data in new ways about your city, your government, about education. You can contribute in kind of idea marketplaces. GitHub, I think, is a platform. And then you can do the social media stuff. So it's a big, broad term. But that means it's a little tricky to know how many people are involved, because like when you add it all up, we know that there are millions of people engaged on these platforms for their livelihoods. I'm sorry the slide's so old, but it's really hard to actually get that number correct. And we do a chapter in the book in Indonesia, which was an exercise to try to get better at this. We estimate from secondary sources in Indonesia, that basically 1 in 5 Indonesians of working age, so not the kids and not the retirees, but the people who are working or of working age, 1 in 5 gets at least some of their income from platform activities. And the way you get to that big number is by adding WhatsApp in there, pretty much. That if everybody's like selling a little bit on the side, in kind of a, you guys sometimes say a hustle, then that number gets pretty big. But this is something that a lot of people are involved in. We don't think we give it enough attention as a kind of a practice and a way to pursue a livelihood. You notice I've gotten like 5 slides in yet. I haven't mentioned the word job at all. I've used livelihood on purpose because it centers on the strategies that people have to earn a living for themselves and their families using the resources that are around them. So that's this livelihood perspective. I'm going kind of quick. Is this okay? I'm just buzzing through a few slides. Yeah. All right. A few more. So it's nice, the development community, the kind of the big guys in Geneva trying to figure out where the world is going, are paying attention to this now. So the World Employment and Social Outlook, which was the biggest annual report of the ILO in 2021, was about gig work. That's like the delivery guy on the cover. UNCTAD, which is the UN Commission on Trade and Development, had a whole big report in 2019 about platforms and platformization. And the UN's Special Commission on Digital Cooperation also really talks about digital interdependence, right? And we're all connected now. So the gears are turning, and the world is paying attention to this. And the work that Haroon, you're doing, and then the people on this call are doing, is kind of having those same conversations grounded in the data and experiences of your own kind of pursuits, right? And as a world, we're making sense of the economy we're living in, this digital economy, kind of as we go. But it is a real topic for fresh conversation, because some things are good and some things are not so good about this type of economy. So let me talk about platform livelihoods just a little bit. I think I mentioned this earlier. I didn't use the word job, right? I like to think about this as livelihoods because it's actually a really old idea. People don't necessarily all get the luck or the privilege to have a salaried job with a contract where they know they're going to go to the same office or the same job site day in, day out. A lot of people have to build a livelihood strategy out of the things around them. So, the development community, like this paper from Chambers and Conway, which is quite old now, talks about it as everybody makes a living through a combination of their skills, what they know how to do, their capabilities, the access and the claims they have. Some people's networks are better than others. Some people are positioned to kind of take advantage of money moving by in a hurry, others aren't. And their stores and resources, their tools and their assets and their resilience, right? That they can draw on. They put together their labor and their tools and their expertise in a certain situation, and out comes a livelihood. Oldest thing in time, and yet really the best way to look at platforms right now, and to look at how people use platforms to earn a living. I don't have time for videos, but I will tell you at the end, we've done a whole bunch of documentary videos. A lot of them are first person, where we've asked individual entrepreneurs and gig workers to carry a phone with them and like tell their story, like selfie style, as opposed to big camera crew coming in from outside. And the stories are amazing. And I would, if you have a chance to browse through them, some of them might strike your interest or remind you of things that you're doing in your own world, or that your friends are doing to earn a living. This woman, for example, runs a small shop, and she was talking about how she used the platforms to augment the foot traffic coming to her shop. Put stuff on Facebook, put stuff on WhatsApp, and so on, and she can kind of feature what the new clothes are of the day. So look, this seems like a big picture, right? I've talked about all these different ways of working. That means that many different types of people have platform livelihoods, and they vary a lot. We met people who are working as
I think I've lost you, Mr. Jonathan, or am I the only person?